I had the opportunity to film a wedding 2 days ago using the Lumix S1 Mark II as my main camera. And let's just say things got really hot.
When I met you at Burning Man, we were just part of the same friend group.
I've giggled and laugh-cried with you more times than I can count. Now, if that isn't nice, I don't know what is.
We make decisions based on what's best for us. Makes both of our lives better. You radiate peace in a way that makes challenges feel manageable.
Love is earned every day. It's not given just because you stand in front of someone and say, I do. I vowed to earn your love with each passing day.
I know a lot of you love this subject, but the camera did not get hot. It did not overheat. I didn't get any overheat warnings. Did I make sure that I did everything possible so that it wouldn't overheat? Yes and no, because I shot in demanding formats. I did a lot of 5.1K 60 frames per second open gate. I did a lot of 4K 60, 422, and that's what I filmed with most of the day as the main camera. No overheat warning, no overheating. It was 90 degrees that day, and the camera performed great, and in some aspects, surprisingly great. Some things to note: I was using a dummy battery from Condor Blue. I was using SanDisk SDXC card. That's what I was recording all the video to. And I used a cage, and this is the exact setup I was using. Lumix S1II, Tilta cage, Tilta V-mount base, Ulanzi V-mount, and 8-hour wedding. I still had 50% left on this V-mount. I was not using a monitor because some of you may know the Lumix S1II loses autofocus tracking. It still tracks autofocus and all that, but you don't have control over the tracking. You don't see the box and everything. When you're using it with HDMI output, anything more than 60 frames per second in resolution higher than 4K. So 4K 60, you still have all of your autofocus tracking options and everything via HDMI out and all that stuff. It's just like 5.1K open gate 60p, which I filmed with mostly during the day. I wouldn't have autofocus tracking with that, so I just went without the monitor. And this monitor, thankfully, is much better than any Sony camera monitor I've ever experienced, so that helped out. And I had no problem seeing if I was in focus and all that stuff. In many ways, I was not surprised that the camera didn't overheat, because this whole overheating nonsense that unfortunately I kind of helped create a little bit on my previous video doing the auto overheating test. That overheating test where the camera only lasted 6 minutes or 10 minutes is a very unrealistic situation. Okay, not only was it in direct sunlight, but the sunlight was also reflecting off of my house, so it was getting like sunlight blasted at it on all angles. No matter if it's Lumix or Sony, any camera like this is going to overheat really quickly in that situation. So this reminds me a lot of when the Sony A7S III came out. Someone did a 4K 60 overheating test, and it was literally outside in direct sunlight in Florida, and the A7S III overheated really quickly. And after that, everyone was like, oh, A7S III overheats, A7S III overheats. And by now, 5 years later, you know the A7S III does not overheat like that. It is a very good, reliable camera. Granted, again, it is only processing 12 megapixels, okay? So you want more specs, you want more power, you want all these things. The S1 Mark II provides you with that. You're talking about 6K up to 30p open gate, 5.1K 60p open gate, 24 megapixels instead of 12. You have fans built into the camera. So it's the fact that it can be used reliably in demanding formats and not even show a warning is amazing to me. I will tell you this right now. Sony fanboys are going to think I'm shilling for Lumix. I felt like I did not lose any functionality with autofocus using the S1 Mark II compared to my Sony FX3. I mean, maybe the Sony ZV one because it has AI and all that stuff. But when it comes to like human autofocus tracking, the Lumix S1 Mark II was incredible. I thought that it would be less sticky. I thought that it might jump around, it might do crazy stuff on me. And it didn't. And if it did do something random, it is nothing that Sony FX3 and stuff like that, you know, would also do on me. But there is some features of the autofocus of the Lumix S1II that actually makes it better than Sony in some ways. For example, when you touch track and you want to move from one subject to the next, you just kind of press the button and you slide over to the person you want to focus on. However, when you put your finger on the screen, it will stay focused on where your finger is at. And a lot of times sketchy situations like in this wedding, like the bubbles being blown like during the ceremony, and the fire scenes at nighttime where I had to go into 12,800 ISO on the Lumix S1 Mark II to get proper exposure. More on low light in a second. But I'm telling you right now, Sony has definitely hunted on me during bubble send-offs, and Sony can also hunt back and forth and get confused when constant things are in front of it, like fire, things of high contrast and stuff like that. I saw this bubble coming, and all I did was I just made sure I kept my finger on the screen as I was filming, and it stayed locked on the couples even when bubbles were going past, you know, in front of them, you know, in front of the lens. That's something that I kind of don't have the option of doing that unless I like lock the focus, but then I don't have any ability to move to track. So I was able to just keep my finger on the screen where the couple was and I wanted to focus on them, and I could actually move forward and backwards and it would track focus them. It's an amazing thing that is hard to explain on video like this, but while you're using it, it gives you a sense of control. You know, when you put things on autofocus, you hit track and you just kind of hope the camera sticks on them. Like right now, I just hope the camera sticks on my face. But when you're filming, it's great to know that, yes, you have autofocus, but then there's some control you have over the situation. There's something you could do where it could still track, but also won't jump back and forth to other things you don't want it to focus on. You know, and I know the Lumix S1II doesn't have like automatic, you know, tracking of random objects. So like if you have face tracking on, you're not gonna be able to just touch wherever and track a tree or some other random object that is non-human or non-car or non-specific subject that you selected to be, you know, the main autofocus subject. But I didn't feel like I lost any time, speed, or functionality because I just moved the spot focus to where I want to focus and the camera will automatically focus to that area. So for example, I was filming the sign, there's no humans in the shot, but when I was filming the sign, I just took the autofocus spot and just focused on the sign. I was able to film the sign, no problem. I was able to film, you know, details, you know, flowers, whatever, no problem. I didn't see it being any more or less functional than be quote unquote tracking a specific spot on the flowers. You know, if I'm gonna compose center, I'll just leave the focus spot in the center. If I'm gonna compose rule of thirds, I'll put the focus spot in rule of thirds. I didn't find any with that functionally. So in terms of like wedding filmmaking, from going to Sony to Lumix, I actually don't feel like I lost any autofocus ability. Matter of fact, I feel like because of the way I set it up, I had a better experience with the Lumix autofocus than I did using Sony, which is ridiculous to say. And again, you call me show if I want. I've been using Sony for 10 years. I still own FX3 and ZV1, and I intend to keep them. I am selling my A7 IV and FX30 because I don't need them anymore, because my FX3 and my ZV1 are replacing those, and my FX3 is being replaced by the S1II as my main video camera everywhere. So that is that. And another thing that shocked me was the low light. Some of you are going to call BS. Lumix paid me, whatever, to say this. However, I was paid to do this wedding by the couple. They paid me to film their wedding with whatever camera I had, and it happens to be Lumix S1II, and I will gladly shill their love in this video. Great couple, amazing to work with, very fun, as you can see, very creative themselves. Had a great time, in my opinion. I'm not talking about super low light where it's complete pitch black dark and you need to go to like 12,000 ISO. At 12,800 ISO, I was shooting at f1.8, 1/125 shutter. I'm still using shutter speed even though I have shutter angle. I'm just accustomed to it. Okay, call me a loser if you want. When I review my footage versus, say, Park, he's my second shooter of the day. He was using A7S3. The Lumix S1II at 12,800 ISO has a better image than the A7S2. In terms of noise, it seems pretty even, like in between the shadows and highlights and stuff like that. However, the Sony just looks muddy. When you zoom in at all, there's a lot less detail. There's definitely noise reduction being used in the Sony A7S3, and it causes detail loss, but the noise is still there at 12,800. On the Lumix S1II, there is very fine grain looking noise, and to me, it doesn't look bad at all. I didn't use any noise reduction in camera. I did not apply any noise reduction in post, and it just looked great. And even when I zoom into the footage, granted, I am doing a 180-degree shutter, so things aren't going to be as sharp as these subjects are moving a lot when I like freeze frame or something like that. But when there is a moment where there are staying still, the image is still very detailed even when I zoom in. And a lot of it is because it is from a 6K sensor recording at 5.1K or 4K super sample. And a lot of reasons why the noise looks better is because obviously the higher res equals smaller noise. The sensor is really good, and whatever the processing is, it just looks better than the Sony A7S3 at 12,800, and 12,800 is the A7S3's second base ISO. The second base ISO for the Lumix on Vlog, which is what I was using the whole time, is 5,000 ISO, and at 5,000 ISO, it's just clean. Like the footage of the Lumix S1 Mark II, it's hard for me to explain because if I show you YouTube videos of this, YouTube will probably add its own muck to the video with compression and all that stuff. But when I'm reviewing the footage on my monitor, the Lumix, the footage coming from the S1II is just cleaner overall. Like back in the day when dudes used to tell me the A7S3 Sony footage, the shadows just look a little messy, mushy. It has some things going on to it. I just called bullshit. You know what I mean? I figured this is just how it is. I mean, why would you look into the corners or the shadows to look for like muck and noise or artifacts and stuff like that? No one does that, right? You just focus on like the face. But when I review the footage, especially these talking head type footage, and I'm looking into the shadows, the corners and everything, there is no junk in the Lumix footage. The footage is just super clean. Whereas filming these things, reviewing on my monitor for Sony, there's always some stuff, some movements going on on these areas. And I just thought it was just normal. I just thought it's normal image processing, whatever. But I don't see it in Lumix as at least it's not as obvious, when I'm zooming in and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to pick sweep. I'm just reviewing it on my bigger 4K screen, and I see it. And the S1 Mark II is just cleaner, man. So from a perspective of a Sony user, it's tough for me to like look at Lumix footage, seeing how the quality I can get, and seeing the fact that it autofocuses, in my opinion, just as good as Sony, at least in video, And for my use case, again, this is my use case. It's tough for me to just be like, okay, I'll just, continue filming my Sony. Lumix is great and all. I can't. It's one of those things where like I almost wish like, hey, like if I never tried out the S1 Mark II, then things wouldn't matter to me. But like once I see this, it's a problem. Like honestly, when I first used A7 IV with its 7K downsample, yeah, I noticed the sharpness and all that stuff. But I looked past it because I knew I would have to crop in doing 4K 60 work, which is, I use 4K 60 a lot because I film a lot of weddings and stuff and events. And that was a deal breaker for me. Now I literally have like this sharpness, this detail, this depth, image quality, and I have 4K 60 full frame. And now apparently like 12,800, like in usable range of low light, the image is better. So I don't even think this is a subjective thing. This is a complete objective thing based on me looking and pixel peeping and staring at these images, at least, up to my test, throughout the range from 640 ISO to 12,800 ISO, the image in the S1 Mark II is just better. It's more detailed. It has cleaner shadows, and dynamic range is pretty much the same. Why do I keep comparing this camera to like A7S III or something like that? Is because that has been my main camera all this time. And, it kind of falls in that price range, $3,200. If you're looking for like a dedicated video camera, FX3, A7S III, really the only thing the FX3 has on the Lumix S1 Mark II is probably longer, like super high heat 4K 60 video recording. But the Lumix, people don't forget the Lumix does have a fan, and there are ways to film a lot longer and even as long as FX3. There's just minor adjustments you have to do. One, you film with a dummy battery, which I did, reduce a lot of heat. You use one of Lumix's specific SD cards that they are approved, or they do not use CF Express, use SDXC cards that they approved, or even better, use external SSD recording, which I am going to do doing forward, considering there's a lot of nice cheap SSD, 1 terabyte Condor Blue SSD handle, 1 terabyte SSD, small SSDs that are approved by Lumix. You record directly to that, and it's going to reduce the amount of heat produced by these cameras by a lot, allowing you to film a lot longer, and in a lot of cases basically 5.1K 60 open gate indefinitely in weather such as this office here. Whereas the Sony A1, don't tell me how I know, but it overheat 30 minutes in 4K 60 indoors. I'm just letting you know that right now. So you could pretty much film indefinitely with the Lumix S1II 5.1K 60 indoors in like 78 degree weather, like it is in my office. If you're in my situation, right, where you're pretty invested in Sony gear, you have multiple Sony bodies, I would at least give the Lumix S1 Mark II a try. Whether you rent it, find someone who has it, borrow it, whatever, try it out, test some of the footage and see it, look at it for yourself. If you are only on Sony, you have one body, let's say you have an FX3, A7 IV, and you're looking to like upgrade to like a new video camera, you're waiting for like, I don't know, FX3 Mark II or something like that, and you own a 2470 Sigma lens or 2470 GM or something like that, and you just want like a upgrade video camera, like I wouldn't hesitate to get the Lumix S1 Mark II. There's plenty of Sigma lenses. Like the lens I used the entire time for the wedding was a Sigma 28 to 45 f1.8 L mount lens. You have the entire Sigma DG DN. DN stands for D's Nuts lens. Right now I'm using the Sigma 24 DG DN F2 DN stands for D's Nuts, of course, lens on the Lumix S9, which I actually bought. So I have enjoyed the Lumix S1 Mark II so much that I decided to buy a Lumix S9 to play around with, because in many ways I am shocked at the image quality and I'm just really impressed. Again, I'm still using Sony, guys, so I'm not like dipping out on Sony. I am still a Sony user. I'm also now a Lumix user. So take that as you will, okay? No one's making you do anything. All I got to tell you is this. Life is really short. And, you know, I love filmmaking. I love gear. I love cameras and stuff like that. And part of me just realized, like, I'm already 41. You know, things happen really fast. Who knows, man? And I'm going to try to experience things as much as I can. You know, like the time we have here on this earth is not long at all. And while I'm here and I have the ability to, I have the means to, I'm blessed enough. I live in the United States. I have work. My wife works and all that stuff. I can experiment with things. I have a YouTube channel. That makes things easier, obviously, for me to like muck around with whatever gear I want. Don't go hear, you know, dudes in the comments, you know, calling me a shill and all these things, you know, saying this just for because Panasonic loaned me a camera or Panasonic paying me or something. They're not paying me. They loan me the camera, but I always keep it a buck, man. If I don't like something, I'll say straight up I don't like it, or I'll just return it and don't say anything. You know, the camera is just amazing. There's nothing more I could possibly say unless you try it out for yourself and you look at the footage, you edit the footage and you see what the footage looks like compared to what you have. It's night and day. And it's just hard for me to look past that. Okay. Overheating, all you D-bags that commented, oh, you regret using Lumix now. Oh, it overheats, all this crap. I told you this before and I'm telling you again. All of the Sony cameras been overheating for the past decade, okay? No one talks about it because not many people sit there and film 4K 60 bullshit for 30 minutes. Weddings is like the longest duration I'll ever film with 4K 60, and I never had problems with A7S3 when I had the A7S3, and I'm going to expect the same thing out of S1II because just as when the A7S3 was overheating and people started throwing a fit, calling it, you know, saying that it overheats and all that stuff. Yeah, it can overheat. But the overheating is not a problem for what I'm going to assume is most people. I don't care what you film with. I'm just here to inform you of what is available and just giving you information. You know, you take the information as you will. You want to call me a liar, you want to call me, you know, a shill who's just doing this for like whatever, go ahead. All right, look at other people's reviews and then you're gonna call them shill too. Whatever it is that you want to do. Is it that unfathomable that a camera that is 5 years, 4 years newer than A7S3 FX3 can't perform better than it does? Like, why is it so hard to believe that a newer body camera is better than an older one? Is it because we're stuck on like stereotypes that, oh, Lumix can't autofocus? It's the same stereotype as like Sony has green colors. Sony is notorious for overheating or something like that. Okay. Every camera system has like certain strengths. Every certain camera system has its weaknesses. And crazy enough, the only weakness Lumix has right now is that it doesn't have a bunch of cheap Chinese lenses for you to buy. But all the lenses you really need are available to you, whether it be from Lumix or Sigma or like, you know, a handful of other third-party brands like 7 Artisans, TT Artisans, Sirui, Viltrox Coming, whatever. I'm looking at Sony and the A7S3 and FX3, basically, in my opinion, video cameras that directly compete with the S1II right now. Price range, I guess, specs and all that stuff. You cannot turn off noise reduction in the Sony A7S3, and that shows a lot in the detail. It's when zoomed in, not only because it's 4K, not super sampled, it's mushy. Low light, a lot of noise reduction, you can see it. When you allow the camera to just display its natural noise, and when it's a good camera, high resolution camera, that noise is very fine and small. You don't need noise reduction. The grain, the noise on the camera, the footage looks great. And then you maintain all the detail in the camera. All you Sony fanboys, man, like you guys just cannot look beyond your own investments in your cameras. You would accuse me and other tube douchers for shilling, right, for Lumix, because Lumix let us borrow some cameras. I personally commend Lumix for loaning these cameras, even to me, because I have a record of just straight bashing Lumix. I have a record of saying good things only about Sony, and some could say that I am heavily biased towards Sony in my videos, when I'm talking about other camera brands like Canon and all that stuff. Maybe that is so. They sent me the camera because obviously they were confident that there's nothing I could sit here after I use it that I could say, oh, this camera sucks or something like that. If you could sit there and call me shilling or whatever, I could call you shilling. It's like, how much money is Sony paying you to be willfully ignorant to the fact that your camera is not as good as a camera that is 5 years newer? Okay? Yeah, go out and do whatever you want, right? And, gear doesn't matter. That's, in many ways is true. But as much as I kind of like talk shit about OpenGate a lot, wasn't that, it's overrated for social media reframing, I still believe that. But the way I film, OpenGate helped a lot in terms of how I reframe and how I zoom in and how I keyframe animate my edits, especially when I was filming the fire scenes. So I knew, they're going to have the bride was going to do this fire stuff. But they had like a border that we couldn't cross as videographers and photographers. We had to stay behind the line. I cannot get as close as I would like, and I didn't have a telephoto. Then if I had telephoto, I can't get wide. So I was stuck using the 28 to 45 Sigma. And because I filmed 5.1K, I had the ability to crop in further. And because 12,800, no noise reduction, it was a very clean image. I was able to crop in further, get a clean image, get a tighter shot, to get the look and feel I was going for. And then when some of the guys did get close and their movements were unpredictable, because I was filming OpenGate, and let's say they start throwing the fire up higher, I had the headroom if I wasn't fast enough, and I was able to get everything. Whereas if I was filming 16:9, when they moved upwards or something like that, I wouldn't have been able to capture that. So there's so many moments where I was just like, man, like this OpenGate stuff, great to be able to reframe as you're just shooting run and gun, and things are happening and you're not expecting it. You're not able to properly frame yourself. And look, a lot of times when I'm editing, I cropped into 4K plenty of times, and because these editors are going through, these clips are only there for like a second or something, it really doesn't matter, I guess, like in terms of no one's sitting there pausing it and looking at this 1 second footage to see how detailed it is. But it's a matter of like when you're editing it, when you are sitting there staring at the footage and it's just noticeably cleaner, it's just noticeably sharper, and when you're using it, it is just as good as your Sony cameras, as autofocus, but then it also has like a really good IBIS. It's tough. It's just tough for me to like look away from that. And like right now, as of like 2025, this is like the ideal camera for those of you who like small body, like mirrorless camera filmmaking, like me. Like I have no desire for like FX3, Pixis, those big cameras you rig out and stuff like that. I love this body style. I love small cameras where I could detach, travel with. It's like a regular camera, and then I could do all this and have like a full day like filmmaking rig that I could shoot docs, whatever, and like the quality is the same or just as a lot of cases better than like these other big rig cameras that these documentary filmmakers be using. Like this is ideal, and $3,200. Some cases you get it cheaper, if there's on sale and stuff like that, discounts. 2025, is Sony going to do something like this? They did something. They gave us an FX2, which is basically an A7 IV with slightly different algorithm, giving it 4,000 second base ISO instead of 3,200. But it's A7 IV. I will tell you this right now, 100% without a shadow of a doubt. If I had an FX2, I would not have been able to film that wedding as good as I did with this S1II. If I was using my FX3, I would not have been able to film that wedding as good as I did with this S1II. I used this camera with all of its specs and its abilities, and I use it to get a better result than I would have using my FX3. And even if I wasn't skilled and someone just gave me, they set up the ISO and exposure for me, and I just pointed and shoot it, the image quality is just better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's no arguing 6K sensor versus 12 megapixel 4K sensor downsampled. In my opinion, same dynamic range performance in standard mode. I don't use boost mode. I don't plan to use boost mode because of the rolling shutter. Another reason why I don't like the FX2. Another reason why I don't really, never really got into using the A7 IV. I don't care what camera you want to use. I don't care if you want to buy that Lumix S1 Mark II. I'm just here. My responsibility here is just to let you know my experience, my opinion on this camera, how I used it, so you can make an informed decision for yourself based on your use case, based on your budget, based on what you want to do with your filmmaking, your life, and all that stuff. That is what I'm here for. But if I was gonna give advice to everybody, don't be just blindly fan loyal to like a camera brand. Don't just sit there and be like, oh, this is the best. Like Canon users, oh, Canon has the best color science. No, it doesn't. Like, just shut up about that stuff. Sorry if I offended somebody, but that's subjective matter 100%. If you color grade, it is what it is. A lot of people say Lumix, colors are juicy than Sony. I don't really see that. To me, they both have nice colors. You both got, you want to get colors the way you want, you got to grade them. Camera brands should not be like rooting for a football team. You don't look at Sony or Lumix, you don't look at Sony and wish, their cameras suck just so that, you feel better about the camera that you have. You don't look at Lumix and, you hope that the camera sucks. You hope that everyone's cameras overheat just so that you feel better about your camera. That's what I do with like sports teams, like if the Washington Commanders suck, like I'm hoping the Dallas Cowboys lose, to make myself feel better. That is how you guys are with camera brands. And I see this because I see the way you guys responded to my overheating video of the Lumix S1II. You didn't even watch the whole video. You look at the thumbnail, you saw 6 minutes. It only lasted 6 minutes outside, in blazing heat, direct sunlight, 5.1K 60p. And you jumped on that, it's trash, it only lasts 6 minutes. That camera sucks. You made a mistake, didn't you? You should never have tried it. As expected, Sony lasts forever or whatever. The fact that you jumped to those conclusions without fully watching the video and without logically thinking through these situations that the test was going through just makes me realize that you are literally hoping that other cameras suck so that you feel better about your camera or your purchase and all that stuff. And you should not feel bad if you're on an older camera, okay? FX3, A7 III. If you're producing work and you're good, it's good shit, you're talented, who the hell cares? It's just really weak. It is really, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's loser shit. You are a damn loser if all because someone likes another camera brand, they're shilling, they're getting paid, or if you just love to respond when you just love to comment, you just love to react to immediately when you notice someone talking about the rival camera brand and how one camera was struggling, with whatever. Just stop with that bullshit. And I get a lot of Lumix S1 Mark II content has been annoying. A lot of people talking good about it. A lot of people, quote unquote, seems like they're shilling it and everything. It's the same thing as the New England Patriots when they're winning all the time, when they're a dynasty. People got tired of the Patriots winning the damn Super Bowl all the time. Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl all the time. If you're not familiar, those are like really good teams in the NFL. Football, American football. And when they lose, everyone loves it. When there's like controversy, like Tom Brady Deflategate, whatever, everyone loves it because it is typical loser mentality. That's how everyone is. So instead of appreciating greatness, appreciating something that is good because it is so good, you want to hate on it. Stop being a loser. With that being said, Lumix S1 Mark II. No overheating issues, 8-hour wedding. Good as, or in some aspects better than Sony A7S III FX3 with autofocusing in wedding filmmaking situations. Low light, 12,800 ISO, Lumix S1 Mark II is better than FX3 and A7S III second base ISO 12,800. IBIS better, image quality details are better, cleaner image. I don't know what else to say. That is what it is. Take the information for what you will. A couple things I want to say about Lumix in general is that they just seem like a really detail-oriented camera company where they are very particular with specific things. Like they have SD cards that they approve and don't approve. They have SSDs that they approve or don't approve. Don't approve as in they haven't done the fully testing yet. Doesn't mean you can't use it. You can, but it's not been fully like voucher. Like, hey, you know, Lumix won't guarantee like there won't be a hiccup or something like that. Things happen, you know, and it's great that, you know, you're not just blindly buying any random SD card you see on sale to use with your camera. At least you know that there's like these few brands that Lumix says, hey, we approve these brands to be used and you should get optimal performance out of them. And then you could just pick those to buy. These guys really care about every little detail. Like as have these cameras on loan, I report back issues and stuff like that with the camera, questions, and they respond, they talk, they ask about it, and they give me available, viable solutions, things that they're still working on, all that stuff. There's one issue that did happen with the S1 Mark II that I will mention, but I also want to make very clear that I've had the same issue with Sony before. So this is not like an isolated thing with a Lumix camera or something like that. Some random crap happened where I was recording the first dance, and when I hit to stop recording, the camera wouldn't stop recording. It just kept rolling. I turned the camera off. The camera wouldn't turn off. It would actually just still keep recording. So what do? Do I leave it or what? I decided to pull battery. Yes, I know your files could be corrupted, and that's usually what happens. I already know this before. When I was using the Sony camera, I was filming an Indian wedding. It was like a 3-hour ceremony, and at 3-hour mark, I hit to stop recording to change the battery. But it was a big file, 3 hours. It was still writing to the card, but I pulled the battery out just out of like muscle memory. I pulled the battery before it finished writing. I went back into the camera. The file wasn't there. I was freaked out. But I trusted the process. Like I thought, hey, it cannot be completely deleted. I got home, put the SD card into the computer, and lo and behold, the file was right there. It was still there. The camera just couldn't read it because, you know, it didn't finish writing, you know, whatever code it needed for the camera to recognize the file. Lumix did the same thing. The file was there. I just had to repair it. So Lumix has a program called Lumix File Repair. Downloaded it, it repaired the file, had the full first stance, no problem. I wasn't panicking at the time. I expected that to happen, but I did. And I think you could also repair it in the camera, but I didn't know about that, so I didn't do it. But I reported to Lumix, and Lumix told me that, hey, it could be a number of things. It could be the Condor Blue dummy battery that, you know, they got to make sure the voltage is all good, or it could be the SanDisk SDXC. You know, they had to update some criteria in that, you know, from the older serial number SD cards to the newer ones, whatever. So they're really like particular hands-on about these things, and they're super accessible to users, you know, to ask questions and stuff. And, you know, it's really good to see that they care about these little things, you know, and it just kind of shows in like their cameras and like, you know, they're sticklers about the image quality and all that stuff. That's why it took them so long to, you know, have phase detect and stuff like that. So I hope this video is insightful. I hope it helped you make a purchase decision on your next camera or not, you know. Till next time, lighten up.
When I met you at Burning Man, we were just part of the same friend group.
I've giggled and laugh cried with you more times than I can count. Now, if that isn't nice, I don't know what is.
We make decisions based on what's best for us. Makes both of our lives better. You radiate peace in a way that makes challenges feel manageable.
Love is earned every day. It's not given just because you stand in front of someone and say, I do. I vowed to earn your love with each passing day.
You got a new camera? Yeah, this is actually the Lumix S1II. I actually have it all rigged out with the tilter cage on it. Those tube doucher shills actually weren't shilling. This is a great camera. Oh my god, Lumix S1II. It's trash and unprofessional. Why do you say that? It have an overheat problem. Bro, I use this camera to film 6K open gate for like 3 hours. 5.1K 60 frames per second open gate in like 95-degree weather. I didn't even get an overheat warning. No, man. I have a friend with an uncle who cousin saw on the Facebook a guy say his friend father with a Lumix S1II it overheat in 5 minutes with 4K 60. They must have been in India filming Indian street food directly on top of a bucket of hot brown oil surrounded by hot and humid sweaty pits. You need to do the overheat test outside in direct sunlight 4K 60. Bro, no one films a long duration 4K 60p in shitty ass direct sunlight. I am not gonna do a bunch of unrealistic overheating tests. Let me show you. You could film the camera with 4K 60, put in the microwave. It overheat, it unprofessional. You film the camera 4K 60 in the air fryer, it overheat, it unprofessional. You film the camera like that 4K 60, it overheat, it unprofessional. Bro, back your mouth away from the damn camera. Your hot ass fish sauce breath will melt the camera before it even overheats.